it's hard when I deal with people who have had some serious trauma. It's one of the things I coach around is traumatic events and things that have happened. It's hard to tell anybody that was supposed to happen.
Right.
But helping them to be able to utilize it to become better as opposed to it limiting you is a real key to vibrant and audacious living.
Mm-hmm.
It is learning how to rise above all of that. And I call it, let's turn our baggage into luggage and create the life we would love.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. Audley Stevenson here with another edition of hands down the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod. You also can subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting that bell down below. Ding, ding, ding. And that way you're connected to all great things audacious related. It's always a pleasure, and I'm pleased to chat about the different ways that we can grow and develop and become more audacious in our everyday lives, as we've been doing here on this podcast the last little while. Conversely, there's also great value from an awareness standpoint to discuss the things that potentially could hold us back from living that life that we want to live. Donna Tashjian is a coach, speaker, and fellow podcaster who primarily works with women who've undergone traumatic experience in their past and really helps them let go of the emotional baggage they've been carrying around. I don't think people fully realize the harmful impact carrying this baggage can have on their lives, and I would say certainly from a physical standpoint and even a mental perspective. And so I'm really glad Donna took some time to walk us through some of the issues that people are experiencing, and certainly some of the clients that they've gone through. And so I think it's a really, really good chat you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with life coach Donna Tashjian. Enjoy. Hey Donna, thank you for being here and joining me on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you with me today.
It is a pleasure to be here. I love the name of your podcast.
Thank you. You know, I remember the sort of initial process where I was sort of thinking about, like, you know, I want to do this podcast, but I also wanted, and you might sort of appreciate this, I wanted it to be something that I could connect with. Because if you do something you connect with, your chance, you know, you'll have more energy for it, more life, you're more excited, you're really passionate about it. And I started thinking about my own life and what mattered to me and what was important. And the thing I nailed in on, Donna, is that when I looked at sort of all my sort of successes or accomplishments, there was some level of audaciousness or boldness that existed. And everything after that fell into place. And so here we are. And so
here we are.
Off we go. Now, I know you podcast as well, and your podcast is around designing around people's greatness, which I think is awesome. My personal philosophy, I think that there's a greatness that lies in every single one of us, and it's just a matter of sort of awakening that seed of potential that's there. And the part about that really resonates for me is that we all are kind of different, and we're all on our own path, and we all get awoken or have this eureka moment all at different times. But you know, what's meant for me is me, and what's meant for you is meant for you. And so I wanted to sort of touch on that as a starting point, because that's a personal favorite for me, hands down.
Yes, one of my favorite things to talk about, because that's the same as comparison. is,
Mm.
what is great for you isn't great for me.
Right.
But sometimes I think what I should be doing what you're doing, or something along those lines.
Right.
And comparison, it just bluntly, it kills.
Yes.
It kills hope, it kills dreams, it kills self-esteem. And so when I'm talking in my groups and in some different platforms that I had speak on, I say, we are like flowers. I love flowers. It's my logo is a flower. So I love flowers. And I say, how can you compare a daffodil to a rose,
Right.
to a peony,
Right.
to chrysanthemums and all of the beautiful flowers? They were never meant to compare themselves with each other.
Right.
They were only supposed to be them. And so learning to be able to, the name of what I do is vibrant living. It goes
Yeah.
along with your audaciousness,
Yeah.
learning to live out there vibrantly, your whole you, and be all that you can be in whatever journey and place you are on your journey.
Yes. 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 Life sometimes get in the way, Donna, right, of us being able to do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And past experiences, or even things that we encounter, they, we sort of, I think what happens is we forget that the obstacles, if you will, that we encounter, we're supposed to encounter them, and that's what we get better. That's how we grow and become a newer version of ourselves, if you will. But we need them. But sometimes it's hard to see that in the midst of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. Learning to be able to, it's hard when I deal with people who have had some serious trauma. It's one of the things I coach around is traumatic events and things that have happened. It's hard to tell anybody that was supposed to happen.
Right.
But helping them to be able to utilize it to become better, as opposed to it limiting you, is a real key to vibrant and audacious living. It is learning how to rise above all of that. And I call it, let's turn our baggage into luggage and create the life we would love. And so
that.
learning how to
that.
move through that is something, because I didn't always live vibrantly or audaciously.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
Yep. Hey, me too. I'm with you.
Did not at all live in that way. So learning to be able to live that way has been something that's been really important in a growth process for me.
Yeah. The idea of turning baggage into luggage, I think, is fabulous and a great analogy, because oftentimes, well, even in that analogy, it's the same piece of luggage, if you will. It's just you just view it differently, or you choose to view it differently. And I think when we can make those conscious choices about the things that we see, we're able to cope and deal with them better, aren't we?
Yes. And sometimes that changing the perspective, looking at them differently, is a process of healing that occurs. But yes, our perspective changes everything.
Right.
I use the analogy of a bug and an eagle. They're looking at the same landscape, but their view is completely different.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think if we can remember that more often, and not that we don't know these things, right, Donna? I think we all know these things, but being able to draw on them in those moments we need them, that's sometimes a disconnect and the challenge for people.
Yes. It is part of the disconnect. I agree.
You're working with from those individuals going through trauma. I would imagine that people are coming to you from they're all at different places in their lives, and the fascinating thing with me, I find interesting with trauma, is that for a lot of people it exists. They don't know that it's there. That all they know that in their life there's something kind of off, or maybe they react a certain way to a situation, or feel a certain way about something, but don't know the root cause of that. And oftentimes you can trace that back to your childhood in some instances, can't you?
Yes. I would say most of the people I deal with are aware that it occurred. They're not, but a lot of them, a lot of times we wouldn't call it traumatic because it was just normal. It was just the way it was. It was all that we knew. And so
That's a really, really good point, Donna. It really, really is, because if that's all you know, exactly, you're not seeing as trauma. It's like that's what life is, isn't it? Isn't it for you, right?
yeah, exactly. And so knowing that, learning that it wasn't okay or something was wrong or whatever it was, and learning to be able to process that, then there's guilt and trying, especially if parents were involved,
Right.
or someone that you care about, not blaming them. So minimizing what happened. Or generally speaking, most of our parents did the best they could.
Sure.
But that does not mean that something didn't affect me. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it is the way it is. Right. And learning to be able to process all of that. And I call it finding where you are on your map. And I tell a funny story about that. Is it okay if I share that?
Absolutely. We love funny stories here.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit humorous, but this is a story of a man who was taking a business trip to Chicago.
Okay.
And it was really important. He needed to make this deal work. And so and the connection to his flights was running behind. And he was so afraid he was going to be late for his appointment. Now, this is the days before GPS, because my map analogy would mess up if there was a GPS involved. So,
right. Okay. I'm with you.
So he rushes to the airport and lands in Chicago, and he runs to the rental car place. He goes, I need my car. I've got to hurry. So he grabs his keys, turns to run away. Oh, I need a map. And he grabs a map off the counter and rushes out the door and is driving all around Chicago trying to find this place. And he can't find it. So he gets so frustrated. He finally pulls over and opens the map all the way. And it's a map of Detroit. Now, I don't know about you, but my life has felt like that. I'm trying to find how to get to where I want to go, and I cannot find it. And I'm reading the wrong map.
Yes. Yeah.
And the map is usually my labels, what has happened to me, the trauma that has occurred, all of that kind of stuff. That's the map I'm reading. And I can't get to where I want to go when I'm reading that map.
Right.
So learning how to get a new map, to be able to find out, this is where I am. I'm currently in Chicago, not Detroit. Yep, that's right. And this is where I want to go. And so how do I do that? And get support, get help. In this information age, we keep trying to do it all by ourselves.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Because we can Google everything, right?
We can Google absolutely everything. It's not the days where I had to go to the library.
Right.
We can Google everything. And so we think we can, there's a YouTube for everything. Absolutely everything. Absolutely. And we think we can figure it out, but you can't see your blind spots.
That's right.
You can't see. And why don't we utilize the knowledge of people who have done this before and make it easier? So learning how to, so that's my story about our maps.
Well, or even knowledge, but sometimes their perspective of us, because individuals seeing us, and oftentimes, how many times you've been in a scenario or a situation where someone can see something in you that you haven't seen in yourself. Yes. And they're able to do that because they've got that outside view of you, right? They can step back and go, oh, this is how I see it. And so, there is value now, by the same token, I think you have to be mindful as to how much of people's opinions of you take in, because it can't be too much. You got to be mindful of that. But at the same time, that outside perspective that they can have and can be enlightening in so many ways.
Well, as a coach, I am not telling you necessarily what I see in you,
right? But
I am bringing you to the place that you see it. And that's the difference with a coach, is I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what to see. I'm not telling you what to be. I'm helping you see the clarity, you to get clarity on all of those hidden spots, you to be able to see who you want to be without the restrictions of the old map. So that's the difference I bring as a coach.
And I can see for some people who, so if you come in and you don't know where you want to go, or you just feel like you need help, I can see people coming to you as a coach saying, well, fix it. Or, Donna, you need to do this for me, or you need to show me because I don't know. right? To turn around to someone and say, well, no, you've got to do the work. I can kind of see where it's like, wait a second.
Well, I don't say it like that.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So how would you say it, Donna? I come to you, I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know where I got to be. I'm trying to figure out, you got to fix it for me, Donna. How do you do that? What do you tell me?
Will you role play with me for a minute?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So if you could look into the future a year from now.
Okay.
And you had a magic wand that could make all of the restrictions, no money problems, no people problems, no life problems, it all go away. What would your life look like?
I would say I'd be happy. I would be able to travel freely whenever I want. I don't have to worry about the health of my family. Everyone's, all those things are intact, and I can live life audaciously.
Okay. So if you were to live happily, what would you be doing? I mean, you're traveling. What else are you doing?
I'd be traveling. I'd be on the beach. I can see myself hanging around the beach and just visiting new places, exploring new things I've never done before, and just having new experiences.
That's what I do, is just helping to expand what you already, because you already knew that.
Right.
You already knew that was in you, but not all people have the idea. When I have been trying to survive,
yes,
I don't know how to plan a year down the road as I'm trying to live through the day.
Right.
And so helping people gently to be able to create a vision. So it's not, well, you got to do the work. No, I don't say that.
Right.
And it's helping them. It is assisting them. They would not be able to see clarity. And there is a lot of aha moments when I remember mine with my coach, and I started with a coach very skeptically. What's this going to do for me?
Right.
And learning to be able to expand your mind and your thinking of what is possible is an amazing gift that coaches bring to the table.
They do. And even, look, even in this, our brief exchange, role play exchange, I had to think, I had to go, that's a good question. And I had to do some digging myself. And it did kind of feel like a little like work for a second. I'm like, okay, I gotta go. But I think that's where the value is, because when you as an individual can do that work, and I know I keep referring to as work, but if you can do that necessary digging, if you were the exploration to figure out what it is that you want, you're more apt to own it and claim it as your own, aren't you?
Yes. Because I'm not telling you what you should do. It's you deciding. This is because most of us are really tired of people telling us what we should do.
That's right. Yes.
We've all had that. In your vision, in your dream of travel, what would you be doing for income?
Right. That's a good question. Do they pay you for traveling? That's right.
I'm not telling you the answers. I'm asking the questions.
That's right.
It's like, so what do you do for a living? You're able to travel freely, because I know there's a part of you. My intuition is telling me there's a part of you that really wants to help people.
Sure.
Absolutely. And be an encourager. So what does that look like for you?
Right.
If you were doing what you really loved, what would that part that would bring income in at the same time helping people look like for you? So that's something for you to think about.
Right. No, you've got me. The wheels are turning already. but I do think, though, there's a value in us going through that exercise, and not even in the context of a coaching relationship, right? Where I've got the coach, but to even go through that and check ourselves sometimes, like, am I going where I want to go? Am I doing the things that bring me enjoyment or satisfaction or fulfillment, right? These are all important aspects of living that happy life we talk about.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yep. Yeah. We sort of talked about trauma and dealing with trauma, but I wonder if you sort of talk about the sort of day-to-day life obstacles, right? We all run into them. We all encounter them. They come in our path. I oftentimes use an analogy of we're on this path and a boulder, lands in front of us, and it's our job to kind of, whether we get up, over, around, or through, because on the other side of that boulder is kind of where all the greatness lies. So we've got to get there, and our goal has to be getting on the other side of that boulder. I don't know if you sort of talk a little about how you see that and on our path, if you will, when it comes to obstacles.
Um, I often say that in every adversity, including the really difficult ones,
Mm-hmm.
there is a gift.
Mm.
And one of the things that I teach for helping people to move through it, changing from baggage to luggage, in my analogy, is looking for the gift in the difficulties, looking at the gift in the disappointment. Where is the gift? And the gift helps us when I begin to search for something good in
Yep.
the middle of the yucky stuff, then it changes my perspective because
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for good. And you begin to see things differently when you look for good. I call those things gifts wrapped in sandpaper. They're not pretty. They're not
They don't
all
feel
gorgeous.
nice.
They don't feel nice. There's nothing wonderful in the appearance or even in the experience.
Right.
The way vibrant living was birthed, if you will, is I got laid off from a job that I thought was going to be it.
Right.
You
Right.
have all those eggs in one basket kind of thing. And it was an awful low day for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I now say it was the worst, well, not the worst, but one of the worst and the best day all in one, because vibrant living was born, and it would not have if I had continued to work at that place.
Right.
Because I thought that was all I was capable of. I said that in air quotes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even scratching the surface
Gotcha.
of what I'm capable of. And so that's just an example of beginning to look for the gift is one step to be able to move through those boulders in the road that look like they're going to stop you.
Right, right. It's I love the idea of looking and being very conscious about that. It certainly takes some practice and it takes a bit of skill, but to be able to say, okay, because there's a sense where you almost have to pause yourself, Donna, where you say, okay,
Yes.
this happened, but now what does it mean, or what can I take out of that?
Yes.
And when you can develop that sort of mindfulness, if you will, where you're stopping yourself and analyzing, there's some skill around that, isn't there?
Yes, there is. It takes intentionality and it takes patience, because you don't always know right away.
Right.
And you don't know what the answer is right away. And it takes just continually looking. It's with expectation that somehow there's going to be something good come out of all of this. And it sometimes it takes the patience, but intentionality, I think, is the best word. It is pausing and going, okay, this happened. What good can come out of this? How can I grow? How can I be stronger? How can I all of the things that maybe you want to become, and just begin to look.
There's an important part of that process that I think the acceptance component, right? Where this has happened, I've accepted it. But part of accepting is also accepting whatever feelings that come with that. So not denying you're going to be happy, sad, or upset or angry. Those things are going to happen. But I truly feel the sooner that we can feel those and the sooner we can get them out the door, the sooner we can get out of the good stuff, right? So we're not denying that they're there. We're accepting that they're there, but moving on as quickly as we possibly can.
I heard a funny story. I have another story. I like stories.
Yeah.
I heard a funny story, and it was using one coach said to a woman that she was working with and said, I want you to behave as if there's no such thing as a bad news or a bad event.
Okay.
That something good can happen. So if a bad thing happens in your mind, you're going to give yourself 3 days before you can freak out.
Okay.
And so she's like, all right, I'll give it a try. And so she goes home, and her husband's home early. She goes, what are you doing here? He said, well, I got laid off today. And she was a woman who was prone to anxiety and depression. And she wanted to go there. And she wanted to freak out. And she's like, nope, I'm going to give it 3 days. This is Tuesday. I can freak out on Friday.
Right.
And so she told her emotions, hold on, let's see what good can come out of this.
Right.
So her husband began to look for other jobs, and all day long, how are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? He lost his job. We don't have that much savings. No, we're not going to freak out until Friday.
Right.
And so she did that all for 3 days. He came home on Thursday and said, I got a new job. It's closer and it pays more. And she didn't ever have to freak out.
Wow.
And so it is learning that it was a better thing, but it didn't look like a better thing.
Right.
And so often is the way the results often are is the perspective I take in them. That's pretty going pretty deep in some of the stuff I teach, but learning that I can help how I experience events. I can't necessarily change the events, but I can work with how I'm going to experience them.
Right. So first of all, great story. I love it. The whole idea of holding off on your emotions is, again, that's another practice skill. But the idea, because it very much feeds in. So I talked about earlier about there's better things on the other side, right? Yeah. And so if we can practice that slow down, mindfulness, take our time sort of approach, and not analyze the whole situation. Even in your personal story, right? You had to experience a setback to get where you are now. Where you are now is better than you ever would have been, right? So it's keeping in mind all those things, which have absolutely are hard to do, Donna. No one is saying it's easy. No one is saying it's a piece of cake. But if you can be, and use the word intentional, even be intentional about that, I think you stand a really good chance of getting yourself to that better place we're referring to.
I think hard is relative. Because the freaking out and the depression and the anxiety in that woman's story would not have been easy. And so hard is relative in comparison. It is different than what we have done before, but it doesn't necessarily have to be hard.
Right.
But it has to be on purpose, because the old way is not getting the results that we really want. And so that's really hard. Right. That's the truth hard.
Right.
But the other way is just different. And so it feels foreign, but it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah. And you referred to, the things like anxiety and depression as an example. Those things can make it hard, but it doesn't have to be. And so I wonder if you sort of talk about strategies and how you manage those two things. If you're, again, coaching, I'm not client. I've come to you as my coach, and I'm going, man, depression, anxiety are beating me up. Like, how do I manage that?
Yeah. Whenever someone is experiencing depression and anxiety, I ask them as if they were to step back and analyze their thought process. What were the thoughts they were thinking that led to the anxiety attack, if you will, right, or the depression moment? And notice the thoughts they're thinking. One of the my pet peeves, one of my soapboxes is the idea that we can't control our thoughts when we truly can. And learning I can't stop the thoughts from entering my head.
Correct.
But I can decide whether I plant them and water them and fertilize them. And my mind, I love to picture my mind as a garden, again, with the flowers and the fruit. I have a theme here.
You're being true to your brand, Donna. You're being true to your brand.
I have a theme. And so if I go and plant a whole bunch of pretty flowers,
yes,
I did not plant weeds, but they show up. Mm-hmm. I still would like to know how that happens, because I didn't plant them. I put brand new soil,
yes,
everything, and fix it all pretty. And then the weeds come, weeds, and I'm like, so our mind is like that.
Yes.
And so the weeds come and we have to pull the weeds, not plant them and let them settle.
Right.
They're really easy to pull when they're tiny.
Yes.
When they get those roots that go down to China, they're not so easy.
Great point.
They're not so easy to pull. So learning to be able to trace your thoughts, and I don't have time to do this all today, but that's the first step.
Yep.
One of the other really important keys is our emotions. And we often equate one of the things about depression is it's the only real illness, any kind of mental illness that equals where we say, I am,
Yep.
whatever it is. And it begins to equal your identity. We do not say, I am cancer.
Right.
But we say, I am depressed, I am anxious, I am schizophrenic, or whatever. All of the mental illnesses we do, I am.
Right.
And they begin to be part of our identity because that's what we believe.
Right.
That's a big subject. But go back to the emotions. Is what emotions truly are is not who you are. What emotions are indicators of your belief system. So let's take the woman whose husband lost a job.
Yep.
What she normally believed is things were going to go bad.
Right.
She wasn't going to be able to feed her kids, and she wouldn't be able to pay her mortgage, and she's going to be homeless.
Right.
Those were her normal belief systems. Because she paused the normal belief system, she was able to create a new one that things don't have to be bad. It could actually turn out for my good. So one of my favorite phrases was, when something happens, I'm like, well, then something better is coming along. It'll be this, what I want, or something even better.
Right.
And so learning that, she began to create a new belief system because she paused her old one. So emotions are like those lights on the dashboard that says your tire pressure is low. You need to check your oil. It's indicators of your belief system. And so learning to be able to process that with the help of a counselor or a coach is super important.
And it is an exercise, but it's an important one. And I think what happens is that can sort of frame and guide your future steps or pathway. But it also it gives you an indicator of where you've come from too, so you can kind of, because both are important to you, very
Back
important
to the map. Back to the map.
That's exactly it. And so when we're I think when we're clear on those things and know, we talk about map, it can be a purpose. I say whatever, it's where are we going, and when you know that purpose, why, it gives you that why, and it answers all of these important questions that help us fortify us. So when we talked about things, obstacles or challenges, they may bump us a little bit, but they don't detour us off where we're trying to go to because we got that map.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Last thing I want to touch on, Donna, and this is really, really good chat, and I really appreciate you being here. I know on your website you talk about living the life of your dreams, and there's some work involved with that, and a little bit of a role play. We kind of touched on it a little bit when I had to sort of think about what I want to do, but I want to sort of talk about the significance of really being clear on what that looks like as we move towards that direction.
Yeah. Well, you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you want to go. It's just really as simple as that.
Right.
But it is a skill to learn how to dream again and how to begin to not just daydream, but to actually dream with intentionality that brings results. Right. And so that's the program that you alluded to, is called Life by Design, not by Default. And it's similar to what you were talking about. It's like this boulder fell in my way. And so now, I wasn't ever meant to do that. Fine. And we quit just because circumstances became adverse. So learning to live life by design, not by default, by the circumstances or situations or the way we grew up or the neighborhood we lived in, or whatever, that we begin to live a life that we can actually design and get the results of what we want. So yes, that information is all on my website. People can check that out. I have a free book on my homepage. There's a lot of resources that are there my passion is to be a messenger of hope, just to be able that there's more. You don't have to stay where you are or be limited by what you are, and you're bigger and greater than you think.
the idea of, helping people overcome their challenges in life, Donna, I love it. So, I commend you for that type of work and what you're doing. Very much in line with my belief system and in terms of encouraging people to be more than what they are. And again, you talk about not being planted. We don't have to be planted where we are. We can grow and blossom and do all sorts of wonderful things. And so I commend you on that. For people who want to catch up with you, tell us your website and they can connect with you, where they can connect with you directly.
It is the letter I, vibrantliving.com.
Awesome. And your podcast, I know we touched on it earlier. I'm a fellow podcaster, so I got to give you an opportunity to plug your Greatness podcast as well.
The podcast is called You Were Designed for Greatness. It is an inspirational podcast of people sharing stories and tools of overcoming life adversities.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of the sharing piece, Donna. So I love it. I had the opportunity to check out a couple episodes, and the idea of sharing our stories, because we have no idea, the people who are listening, what they take from that. We have no idea what they're going through in that moment, and we have no idea if that was, that story that you shared was a light that they need. And so there's great value. It's something I very much encourage, and so I'm really happy to hear that that you harvest these stories, but share them with others.
Yes, one of my favorite.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again for being here with me on the podcast, and all the best, Donna.
Thank you. You too.
Back we are here on the podcast, and I really want to thank Donna for being here to talk about the work that she does and the manner in which she impacts people's lives and helps them to live a more vibrant life. The work you do, Donna, is extremely valuable, and I commend and congratulate you on all your success. Again, helping people overcome those mental barriers are huge and so important. And for many, again, as we talked about, not even in some instances, not even recognizing those barriers are there are huge to overcome. So again, congratulations on all your work and all you're doing. Donna really left us with a lot of great things when I reflect on my conversation with her. But if there's just one thing that I would take from our chat, it would be this. Emotional baggage or emotional backpacks is a term used to describe the unresolved emotional issues, the traumas, the disappointments, the letdowns, and stresses from the past. When feelings haven't been able to run their course, they tend to hang around, and we store them as emotional baggage. Carrying around a full backpack of past emotions can take a toll on us, certainly physically, but it also can interfere with our professional drive or our goals, the ability to establish, maintain, or build healthy relationships, while overall robbing the enjoyment out of life. If you suspect that unresolved emotions are weighing you down, you need to begin the process of healing to unload your baggage, lighten your load, and begin living your best audacious life. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address, and you'll be connected and alerted every time we've got brand new content that comes out. We've reached the end of another episode, and I gotta send a big shout out and thanks to our amazing listeners and all those lovers of Audaciousness for your tremendous ongoing support. It is so much appreciated, and I have great gratitude. I say thank you, and thank you. If you enjoyed the podcast today, please head over and leave a rating. A 5-star rating would be appreciated. We certainly love comments and would ask that you do so as well. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.